Akopanim, we're learning Bez Hashem, the great sugya Abaisai, the sugya of Shoichet, of Chovel. It's a sugya which not only is extremely negay in halacha, but it's also a sugya that gets into an Indian of hashkafas atayro, not just an Indian in halacha, but a hashkafa and outlook and how to understand the Torah's rules and to the things that Chazal tell us. Do they change? The Chazal, the halacha has never changed, but maybe the Metzias changes perhaps. So we have to, Bez Hashem, today, try to learn clear the halachas and try to get clear the nafkaminas and all the ramifications. And that's Bez Hashem. It's a big sugya, as you saw. Let's get right to work. One of the lamites malachas is shoichet. Shoichet, everyone understands that the malacha of shoichet, of killing an animal, where you actually kill the animal, either that you shechted the animal for its skin, like was common in the Mishkan, or you shechted the animal in order to eat the animal for a korban, or even for chulin. So that you understand that that's the malacha of shoichet. And the malacha of shoichet, it's the isser of shoichet is that you were noitel the neshama. That is something that's muskim. You took away the life of the animal. To do it for a positive reason, for example, you're doing it positively to get the skin or for the meat, so then that's an issa d'oraisa. To kill the animal, to prevent the animal from damaging you. You kill a snake, like the Shulchan Aruch talks about in our Sibit, in Siman Shin Tez Zayin and Siv Ches. If you're killing an animal, you're killing a snake, in order that it shouldn't damage you. So then you murdered for the not chiyuvi purpose, for not a positive purpose. You did it for a purpose of just ridding yourself from this animal. So then that's considered an ein tzarich legufay. Ein tzarich legufay, according to Rav the Rishayim and the way we paskin, is d'Rabbanan. It's a very, very chamad d'Rabbanan. It's the most chamad d'Rabbanan. And the Rambam holds it's d'Oraisa. And then halacha, we're machshiv that shita. So therefore, for a person to just say, let's say there's a mosquito and he kills a mosquito, so you have to know, he's killing it to get rid of it. He's not killing it for a positive purpose. According to the Rambam, that's an issa d'oraisa. That's not an issa d'oraisa. That's skila. That's mamish chayiv chatis. That's an issa gomer of the lamites malachas. According to the way we paskin and Rav Yishayim, it's an issa chomer ma'oid. It's an issa d'Rabbanan of the highest nature, and we always take into consideration that the Rambam shita is that it's an issa d'oraisa. That's when you're killing, and that's not the sugya of today, kimat, because that's not as negeya, the sugya of killing. Sometimes a person has to kill an animal which is dangerous on Shabbos, maybe a scorpion, maybe something, maybe a snake that he sees and he doesn't know and he's afraid, and maybe it's a skanstafashis. So then he would be allowed to kill. Number one, according to most of Yishayim, anyways, he's killing it for a not positive purpose. Therefore, it's only an issa d'Rabbanan, but makom pekuach nefesh. And even according to the Rambam, if it's a pekuach nefesh, you're allowed to kill. So that's a sugya which we're not going to focus on as much today. But there's a bigger shaila right now. And the truth is, we will focus toward later on this year. But there's a different shaila right now, is what happens if a person takes blood? What's the issue of chovel on Shabbos? He removes blood on Shabbos, which is lots of cases. He takes blood because a blood test. He takes out blood because he wants to put inside an IV drip. He puts in a needle, stamazo, he puts in a needle because he takes shots, a diabetic, etc. What's the din over there? Is not murder. What's the din of blood removal on Shabbos, causing one to bleed on Shabbos? He picks up a scab, etc. He gives somebody, a knip, you give him a knip, pat him on the back very hard, and maybe you can cause blood. What's the din of causing someone to bleed on Shabbos? What's the din? So here you have a very big machlekes kipshutai. We know that we take on that a chabura chovel be'adam on Shabbos is an issa d'oraisa, and it's probably a tolda of shoichet of what we're talking about. But why is it a tolda? The chayra, it's not the actual netilas neshama. You're not taking away the neshama, and this is what prompted many of the Rishonim to say that the issa is tzeveya. And what's the pshat? It's tzeveya. Well, let's say I'm shechting an animal and I want to dafka leave the blood there so that they should see that it's fresh meat. So then you're doing it for a positive purpose. So then you want the blood to come out, and you're doing it for a positive purpose. So too, if a person were to take out blood, even not with murder, and he's taking it out for a positive purpose, the only issue somebody showing him would be tzeveya. The Rambam has a different shita. The Rambam, and that shita is held by the Ramban, the Rashba, the Ritva, the Ran, the Meiri. They say it's tzeveya, also tzeveya. The Rambam shita is that the person, when he does, this is the Rambam in Perches, Halacha Zayin, the Rambam holds HaChovel, B'chai sheyesh lei or is chayiv mishum mefarik. He learns that it's the Isser, it's a tolda of dash, that he's doing an extraction of sorts. The blood is coming out, it was encased in its encasement, in its case, and now you're releasing the dam, you're unleashing the dam, and that's the Yisr D'Oraisa of Mefarik. That's a Shitas Rambam. Roiv Rishayim, and the way we pass in the halacha, that's the Mishabur and Sivkat and Chavtes, Sivkat and Lamed Aleph, Sivkat and Lamed Beis in our Siman, in the Bir Halacha and the Bermatzkel Chayvel. And this is the Shita of Rashi, the Shita of the Ramban, the Rashba, the Yereim, the Ritva, the Taisis Rid. All these Rishayim go that the Isser of Chayvel is also Netilas Neshama. It's a very big Chiddush. You're not removing the neshama completely, but we know dam is a nefesh and malikot the kula, malikot the palga, malikot the kula. So when you take off even a little bit of blood, there's a removal of neshama. That blood is a chelik of neshama, and there was a removal of neshama. What's the difference if I say that the yisr of chavala is netilas neshama, it's seveya, it's mefarik? So I'll tell you very simple nafkaminas. Nafkamina number one is what happens, Rabbi Isai, if a person causes someone to bleed after he dies. There's certainly no netilas neshama, but you could certainly have mefarik, is extracting the blood from the body. One type of case. What happens? What's the shear? What's the amount that a person is chayiv on? So if you go with the Rambam system, Shabur and Sivkat and Chavtes and in the Bir Halacha that I mentioned, if you go with the Rambam, so the shear of dash is a gregaris. So the only time you chayiv when you hit somebody is if you get out that much blood. That's a pretty good thing. To get out that amount of blood, that's pretty tough. To get out a gregaris worth of dam. But that's all if you're going with dash and you're going with mefarik. But if you're going that the Yisr of Chayvel is netilas neshama, one drop already has the neshama. So you're already over even if one drop is removed. Another nafkamina, and this is the ikka nafkamina we're going to talk about today, is what happens if I chayvel in somebody and I'm doing it just to rid myself of the blood. The case in the times of Chazal was bloodletting, was hakazas dam. So he's doing it to get rid of the blood. He doesn't want the blood for a positive purpose. So if you learn it's mefarik, so the mefarik, that's going to be called ein sarach legufa. That's called, it could be anyways, the Rambam Ein Tzarech Legufa is going to be chayiv. But if you hold, not like the Rambam, Al Kapanim, you hold Ein Tzarech Legufa is potter, and it's not deraisa. So when I'm removing blood, not to use the blood, I'm just getting rid of the blood because there's too much blood. It's called bloodletting. I'm just getting rid of the blood. So then according to the sheet of Mefarik, you're not doing it for a positive purpose. Mashe'ein Kain, if you learn like Rashi says, the Bir Halacha, you learn like all these Rishonim, that the din of Chayvel is netilas neshama, even one drop of blood. So then I just need to know, did you noitel the neshama for a positive purpose? I don't bedafka need the blood. There's less neshama kivyachol inside this body now. So as long as it's for a positive purpose, even albeit that you don't need the blood, that's also going to be an Yisr D'Oraisa. That's the Akadama. And based on that, there's a lot of shilas that come up. No, for example, says the Mishabura to pick a scab and Sivkat and Lamed. So if you have a scab that is totally done, and when you're going to take it off, it's not going to remove any bits of skin, which would be geizes, and it's not going to remove any blood, which would be chayvel, and you're just taking it off, just the crust, and not under, you're revealing the skin, then that's mutter. But says the Mishabura that when I take off a scab and it's going to cause me to bleed, so then says the Mishabura, that's chayvel, you're causing blood over here. It's a netilas neshama. Maybe it's not a positive purpose. It's saying tzarech legufay, but it's certainly aser. And this is why a person has to be careful when he's picking off a scab. Pimples, people have to be very careful. Sometimes a person pops a pimple. There's a whole shaila with sar and pus, and the white stuff comes out. And sometimes that red stuff that was in there, he was in a lot of pain, so there was a little bit red in there, but the red was already out. But then he pushes. That's a shortness, sir, because he's pushing out blood that was inside. That's an Yisr D'Oraisa. And you know what, Rabbi? I'm afraid it might even be an Yisr D'Oraisa. I just said it's Yisr D'Oraisa. Why? He doesn't want the blood. It's not true. The blood cleanses. It might even be an Yisr D'Oraisa. The Baruch Shalom made it that the blood can cleanse the area. I'm a supik, even it might be a Shaila of a D'Oraisa in such a case. Shaila is, what happens? A person has a cut. He cut himself. And he takes his hand and he pushes down on the blood to stop the bleeding. Now, this one I need your help for. I saw in the Chotshani, in Perek Ches, in Chelik Beis, in Perek Lamed Beis, in Reis Aleph, he says, if you have a blood that's coming out, a makkah that's mighty dam, you're not allowed to press on it to stop the blood. Why? Because b'shas ma'isa, it's going to also push out blood. He says, unless it's not a psik ratio. Okay, for shtetzach, if it's not a psik ratio, I'm not talking. But let's say when you're pressing it to stop the blood, but inevitably blood might come out while you're pressing the blood. I just have a shaila I want the olam to think about. And that would be aser, even though you don't want it. It's ein tzarech legufay, and it's still aser. I just wonder if we could don here a shaila. L'chayra, when you're pressing it, so then the blood that comes out is a kilkel. Okay, Makalkal b'chabura is a very big shaila, which we're not going to go into today, right? Makalkal b'chabura is a shaila, but the only time that we say Makalkal b'chabura is chayiv is when you need the dam. So here I have kilkal of the chabura that I don't need the dam. Now, is this a normal way of blood removal? Definitely not. So it's kilkal and it's klachar yad. Is this a positive tzarich in the dam? It's malach shein tzarich l'ruva. No shaila, I don't need the blood. Now, it's also, we spoke last time, if the other remembers, a svar and sod, that when a person is doing the opposite of the malacha, so then the Rambam told us when you're doing the exact opposite of the malacha, maybe it doesn't have the shame of the malacha. You remember last time we spoke about sod, and we said that when a person is trapping the animal, not to acquire the animal, but to rid the animal, the Rambam wanted to say that that's mutter. Unbelievable, even though the Rambam usually would be mechayiv on such a thing. So it's a big chiddush. Maybe here, when I'm stopping the blood, I'm doing the opposite of the malacha. It's kind of misasik of sorts. So it's a misasik, it's ein tzarich legufay, it's a kilkal, it's kalachar yad. And you put this all together, why is the person doing it? He's doing it for fun. He's doing it because he wants to stop the bleeding. So maybe you put that all together, b'makom tzarich, there's a makom to be mekel. Rav Nissen says, not like I'm saying. Versteht if it's not a psik reisha, or you're not sure if it's a psik reisha, you're going to be allowed to do it. Rav Nissen says, not like this. I'll let the item think about it. That's one ha'ara, something to think about. I did see something. First of all, kayadua, let's say a person suffers from hemorrhoids, and he wants to know every time I wipe myself, there's blood on the tissue. So that's a psik reisha. He's causing himself to bleed. Right? And let's say it's a case of where he knows he's bleeding, not that there's just blood there. He knows that he's causing himself to bleed with these hemorrhoids. It could be other things, but that's the example that the place can talk about. So here for sure we'll apply my svar. Here it's a psik reisha, it's lay nichale, it's kilkal, it's klachar yad, it's not a normal way of removal of blood. It's definitely ein tzarich legufay, definitely doesn't want that blood. And you put that all together with kavod abrius. I mean, what's he going to do? He has to go to the toilet. So then we're certainly going to be mekel. I did see in the Sefer Orchos Shabbos, in Perek Dalet, or Samach Aleph, he dons about a person that eats an apple, and he knows that when he eats the apple, he bleeds, or any food for that matter, but an apple is a tough food, so that's why I'm talking about it. He knows that when he eats an apple, he bleeds. His gums bleed. So he's pressing, and it's causing the blood to come out. He writes, he dons over there that it should be also. Now, again, we have a lot of the same svaras that we saw, and that we're going to see in Mirz Hashem when we learn Kosev, in Mirz Hashem. And the svaras that the Mishabura talks about eating a cookie that has the letters on it, and a lot of the svaras are the same svaras. Why you allowed to eat a cookie when it has the letters on it? So the Mishabura says it's a kilkal, you're erasing, and it's a kilkal, and it's klachiyad, it's a not normal way of erasing, and it's definitely in tzarich legufay, and it's all the milas, right? And it's not what he's trying to do. It's a psik reisha, deloy nichle with two drabanans. Rabbi said, when I eat this apple, am I trying to bleed? No. But it's psik reisha, but it's loy nichle. So it's psik reisha, loy nichle, kilkal, klachar yad. You put this all together, and you have to know that there might be certainly a makom to be mekel. Plus, we spoke out once, the Shevet Levi, and Chelik Tes, and Simon Samach Tes, and the Shevet Levi says that when a person is doing a pa'ula, which is mugdar as a normal everyday action, he's eating now. And that's considered a memela and agav to your action. So before a person doesn't eat the apple, yesh makom lahakal b'makom einik Shabbos. Now, that Rabbi says einik Shabbos. But what happens if your einik Shabbos is you go over to a kid in the shul and you give him azah? I remember that guy, Rabbi Isai. Years of therapy aren't helping because of that guy. You know, Sar Balei Chaim is also on children, not just on adults. Ayin in the Chinuch that talks about that. And people think that a child is a Metzias that you're supposed to bother. He doesn't like it when you, but it's like the famous story with the milk. There was a bacher stealing the milk every day, so he put up a sign, Ganif. The next day he puts up a sign, you're going to come back like a chihuahua. And the next day he puts up, every day the guy's stealing the milk. Finally he puts up a sign, Chalav Stam. Next day nobody touches the milk. So we tell this guy, Tzar Balei Chaim on the Yingel and dust. So let's tell him, but maybe if you give him a pinch, maybe it's a Chil Shabbos if he's doing it on Shabbos. So this you should know the Ben Ish Chaim in Va'era Oisid Beis. He says that there's people. He gives it a name. He gets Sarich Lizer Hamana'am. There's tipshim that they hit each other, and that for sure is a Nesidderaisa. If you want the blood, and the Mishabura says when you punch somebody and you want to see the blood, and for Nekama, that could be a Nesidderaisa because you want to see that you got him good. But he says not only that, there's people that their toifis basar chaveiroi, but that's paisa. They pitch shekairin in Arabish kracha. They get psach kracha. He says, "Ubezen nitzra dam," the dam underneath. I don't think he means you just go like this and it turns red. He means when you go like this, maybe the blood, that black and blue marks sometimes of sorts forms. And then what you're doing is that you're causing a chavala by making a black and blue mark. That's an issa deraisa, because the blood has now left its encasement, even though it didn't come out of the skin. And in Yiddish, the Minchas Shabbos brings down that some people, they give a pinch, shekar and knip. So gibt a knip, Rabbi Isai. As any of us kept a knip on Shabbos, he says, maybe you have to be machmer on this, because who knows? Who knows if maybe the blood has been released? So those Rabbi Isai are some cases. Come the Poiskim, and now they discuss something that alavai, it shouldn't be negeya, but a person has to do a bedikas dam. He has to do a blood test on Shabbos. Maybe sometimes he has to check his blood for diabetes and for this and for that. It's not in the hospital, different cases and whatnot. What's the din of a blood test? So here, very, very clear, the Poskim speak out that this is a great prime example of the shaila that we spoke about before. You're taking out a drop of blood for a positive purpose to use. Rabbi, I think it even might be tzeveya, because sometimes they put it in onto a paper to see if it colors it and what color it comes out. But even if not, you're doing an atilas neshama for a beneficial purpose to be able to use the blood, to be able to study the blood. It's mefarek, it's an atilas neshama, and it's an issa deraisa. Obviously, if somebody has to do it into pikuach nefesh, no pikuach nefesh. If it's not a pikuach nefesh, so then you have to know it's an issa deraisa, and the only way to be mekel on such a thing would be al yedei goy. Stama, the case is the person's a chayla or something. So there guy, you'll be able to do it. Kapanim, if it's a pikuach nefesh, he should try to even do it with a shino if he's able to do it with a shino, if it's not the time bahul, etc. But you have to know that such a thing is takin isagamar. I saw a murdik shaila in the Malachim Umnayich, our Rebbe over here in the Aguda, Rabbi Yitzchak Zilbershin Zaying Gesund, in the 358th page. He has in the Isafet a very interesting shaila. He has a shaila that a lot of times the moilim, they have different ways of checking the Billy Rubin and this and that. They have different things. Sometimes they'll give a blood test and they'll check the blood to see what's the level, ability to do the bris. So he brings down of there a very interesting shaila. Could you get a guy? In other words, you want to check the blood. That's an issa deraisa. And it's a positive purpose for the blood. So you'll say, okay, if for a Jew to do it, there's no way. But what about maybe for a guy? And he brings over there that there's a Mishnah Berurah, which can do the Mishnah Berurah taka in Siman Lamed Aleph in Sifkat Chav Beis, that the Mishnah Berurah brings down that if a person wants to do a malacha of machshirei mila for the purpose of the bris, so al yedei goy he's mekel. That's a Mishnah Berurah. Asoymech al divrei mekilim is not mafsid. If you want to do a machshirei mila, he's talking about bringing a knife, rishus harabim and whatnot. So over there he brings down that al yedei goy is soymech to be mekel. So it sounds like the same thing, right? I'm trying to figure out, can I do the bris for this child? And therefore, it's a machshirei mila, al yedei goy, for the purpose of the meal, even though the guy is doing a deraisa, but the will be mutter. But he has a very interesting suffix over there. He has a tzad to say, it was very interesting. He says, what do you mean? What if we find out, al yedei this test, that the kid is not ready for the bris milah? So then it's not machshirei mila, it's we're finding out if the bris is going to work. Al tzad that the bris is not going to happen, so then it comes out that we did something which is not enabling the bris. It's fakir. It's making it that the bris won't occur. So he's very misuppik about this shaila. He's not sure that we're going to be allowed to do this. He's not sure. And the HaRav tell you, I'm also not sure. So I don't know. You have to find out what the Moilim do in this case. I don't know myself. I tried to find out today, and I was unsuccessful. Legabe, if you want to put an IV, so as it work, Rabbi say, when they put in an IV for the first time, do they want the blood? I think they want the blood because they want to see that they got it in the vein. So how do you look at this? You're putting in the IV. You don't really want the blood, but you want the blood to tell me something. Maybe that's considered a malachat tzricha legufa. It's tremendous nafkamina, right? Because if it's deraisa, I'm being told that you don't want the blood. Could you explain why you don't want the blood? Meaning, don't you want the blood in order to know that you got the vein? Or maybe I'm wrong.
When I put in IVs, I put it in and that it's in.
Pesa, you got to speak up. You're not audible.
Can't hear. Can't hear. I'm sorry.
Speak up closer to the computer.
Maybe you'll tell me afterward. Maybe you'll tell me after. But I was always under the impression, which I could be wrong, I was under the impression that they want the blood so that they know that they got the vein. And that's not correct? You don't really want the blood. No, of course you don't want the blood, right? But it makes your life much easier because now you know you got the vein. You mean you could see it without?
Yeah, I think what he's saying is professionals. And
no, I know you're not collecting the blood. This has nothing to do with collecting the blood.
They know where the vein is. They know where the vein is. So I'm answering your question, I think, as a layperson, having had recently a blood test. Even the nurses, they look for the vein, but then they know where the vein is. They're not looking for the blood to come out. Okay, anyway.
Okay. This would be a big shaila. It would be totally on that. If it would be a deraiser, a drabanan, a Chatzkel Abramsky, the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos in the 32nd parak, in Ara Kufnun Ches, he brings down Kevan Shelafi Das Aroifet Srich Loitzi Ma'at Dam Lefnei Azraka. He brings down something different. He brings down that the purpose that the doctors want the blood out, and it's before the IV goes in, which I don't know if that Metzias is today. That I don't know. That I wasn't referring to. And Chatzkel Abramsky seems to say you do want the blood beforehand. I don't understand why. He brings down Shemati and Chatzkel Abramsky, the Kainamar Dr. Schlesinger, who was the Menayel of the Bet Cholim, and he brings here that the Chazon Ish held it was in a Siddur Aisa to even do an IV, but this is something that I see from the doctors today that it would be debatable if that would be true. And you should know that the Orlatzi in Chelik Beis in Perek Lamed Vav Oischaf, he holds that it's not imalachat srich legufa, it's still us. It's still drabanan, but obviously if it's a drabanan, it's a whole different shaila. If it's a drabanan, certain situations will be makel for a Jew to do it. If it's a drabanan b'makom chayli and there's no guy available, will be makel, right? Obviously, I'm not talking about kuch nefesh b'chulei. Akopanim, this is l'chayra. It also is yadua that when you have a person has to take injections, sometimes for diabetes, so each person has to know themselves, but many people, if not right people, if not all people, when they inject it, let's say in their stomach, they say they don't bleed. It's hard for me, Baruch Hashem, that never had to take these to understand this, but they say that's the Metzias, and apparently that's the Metzias that you don't bleed, and it's certainly not a psik ratio that you bleed when you start injecting yourself, and therefore, gezinta hate, if you have to do it on Shabbos, there's no Isser at all. It's not no blood. If there's no blood or it's not a Vadai blood, so then it's not even a psik ratio. So this Rabbi Yisai is part one. Now we're going to go into a fascinating Inyan, the Inyan of lice on Shabbos, which is, it's mamish a fascinating Inyan, Rabbi Yisai. It's unbelievable where you see together the halacha and the shkaf of Torah all together, and let's try to understand what's going on. The Gemara says that the only time there's an issa of netilas neshama is it has to be dumia to the Mishkan. The Mishkan was a case of elim, that they shechted these elim, these big grace animals, and it doesn't have to be grace, the Gemara says. Even a flea, even a parosh, a tiny little flea, that would also be considered murder on Shabbos. But it has to be dumia to elim in as much as elim are para v'rava. Elim are things that they are coming, there's a mommy bear and a tati bear. And that's the only time that it's considered murder klape Hilchos Shabbos. That's the only time klape Hilchos Shabbos. It has to be multiplied, and not that it just formed from the atmosphere, from the zayah, from sweat, from schmutz. So a parosh, a flea, is a vada formed. It's a vada formed. Now it comes out like this. The Gemara comes out and says, actually, let me back up one step. Chazal tell us it's enough that it has para v'rava, that there's peri-v'rivia involved, or it's enough if the animal comes out of the ground. Because since man also came out of the ground, that's also considered a chiyas. That's considered a real chiyas. Mashain came to the Gemara, if it's something like kinim, the Gemara talks about different types of lice, that they are formed from zayah, and they're not formed from para v'rava. It's not coming from, there's no reproduction over there. It just forms, says the Gemara, from zayah. So the Gemara says that in such a case, there's not going to be an Isser Ritzicha on Shabbos, Isser Sheichet on Shabbos. And Lemaisa comes again the Bir Lacha, and he says, but you know what? There is going to be a Drabanan. If something just forms, even though not from the ground, and even though not from a reproductive system, there was no eggs involved or anything like that, he said there should still be an Issa D'Rabbanan. He says, if there's an Issa D'Rabbanan, why did the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch paskin that kinim, there's not even an Issa D'Rabbanan, you're allowed to kill lice on Shabbos? So the halacha that you're right, it should have been a drabanan, but b'makom the tsar of kinim and the makom of mias, they were never geyser on lice, like geyser. So now it should come out. The child has lice or something, or sometimes, unfortunately, the lice, they make their way to the parental, the parents. They are part of harava, the parents to the kids, and now the parents have the lice, and the children have lice, and they want to know, could they kill the lice? You're allowed to kill the lice on Shabbos. Now, before I go weiter, it's a halacha that you're allowed to kill lice on Shabbos. You have some type of a lice spray or something, you're allowed to kill them. Now, before I go weiter, they have these special lice combs. There's no shaila, that's also, that's geizes. There's no heter to rip out your hair because you have lice on Shabbos. That we're never talking about. That's an issa deraisa of geizes. It could be Tarbanan and Chachlagufay, whatever, okay? But that's an Issa Gomer. That we're not talking about. Another question, you have to don about 5 or 6 questions when you don lice. One shal you have to don is, why are you allowed to take out lice on Shabbos? Okay, the Shulchan Aruch says you can kill it. We'll don that in a moment. But why are you allowed to take it out and kill it? Hooray. Lamaisa, isn't it a problem of boirer? This is a very big shaila. No, everybody said, why isn't it a problem of boirer? When you're taking out the lice, could you think of anything which is more orangamished inside the person than lice? But it seems to be some first Gemara that it's not boirer, because the Gemara says that you're allowed to take them out of your hair and kill them. And you're allowed to take them out of your begadim and kill them. I guess you have to say that the lice doesn't become one with the body. Okay, that's a shaila we'll have to deal with in boirer. What about muksa? You're removing this thing, it's muksa. That's it's muksa, no? What happened to muksa? It's definitely it's an animal, it's something that's, it's certainly like a muksa machmas gufay. So what are you gonna have to say? I guess you're gonna have to say, the Rosh said that b'makom hezik, they weren't geyser muksa. Okay, maybe this is considered makom hezik. Maybe you could say that it's a graf shel rei. It's revolting. And we know there's the heter of muksa, but these are all shilas you have to deal with, Rabbi Isa. And what about l'gabei tzeda, what we spoke about last time? When I take out the lice from my hair, l'chayra, I'm being over on sod. I caught this louse. So maybe the fear of shleim zalman is very good. It's a slow-moving item. Or maybe we could say something else, which is what the Mishnah Berurah says over here, which maybe is a raya against Rav Shlomo Zalman. The Mishnah Berurah over here says, in Sivkatan Lamed Vav, the Mishnah Berurah says he's going, the Mishnah Berurah, on a parish. And now he has it sad. There are some that hold there's no tzeda on a parish. Okay, we paskin, there is tzeda on a parish. On a flea, there is tzeda. The Mishnah Berurah says, what's it sad to say there's no tzeda on a parish? So the Mishnah Berurah says, you know why? Because a parish is not par of a rava. The Hainu, the Mishnah Berurah is learning, that's the tzad. Others say not like that. Obviously by a kina, it's not par of a rava. So the Mishnah Berurah just taught us a big insight. This heter that we're talking about, that you're only over on hariga, on ritzicha, on shoichet, on chayvel, on Shabbos, is if it's par of a rava. That's a heter not only in chayvel, that's also a heter in tzad. It has to be dumia to the elim that were trapped in the Mishkan. The elim that were trapped in the Mishkan, they come from a mami bear and a tati bear and the whole works. So too, bein legabe the ariga, bein legabe the tzad. The only time that there's tzad and chayvel on Shabbos is if it's a type of an animal that is par of a rava. So therefore now we know a kina on Shabbos, you can take it out of your hair, don't rip out the hair, don't use a comb. You're no problem amongst, I guess it's a graf shel rei. There's no problem of Vaira, you have to figure it out why. And there's no problem of Sod because it's not part of a Rava, and there's no problem of Ariga because it's not part of a Rava. And that's what you come out. That's what you come out. Is Rabbi Isai, this is a Shaila that Mamish shook the whole entire world. About 400 years ago, maybe even more, maybe 500 years ago, there was a great Goin. This is the Pachad Yitzchak, not the Pachad Yitzchak Rav Hutner, it was also a great Goin. In Erech Tzeda, in Chav Aleph Beis, he asked the Shaila to his Rebbe, Hagoyin Rabbi Yehuda Bril. A guy's going, and he said to him, he has a big problem. He said he looked into the science books of today, of 400 or 500 years ago, and he finds out that today they tell us that there's no such thing. There's no such thing. All of the animals, they come from somewhere. All the little kinim, they come from somewhere. There's an egg. And there's an egg, and if there's an egg, it means that there's a reproduction system. And if it's so, it's coming from somewhere. So the kina has a mama and a zaida and yichus, and the kina has a baba with yichus. So then now it should come out. We're gonna have to change the halacha in Shulchan Aruch. In Shulchan Aruch by us in Siman Shin Tez Zayin Sif Tes, it says that you're allowed to kill lice on Shabbos. Okay, it's a shaila which lice and whatnot. But you're allowed to kill lice on Shabbos. So if you're allowed to kill lice on Shabbos, That's only when they're not part of a rava. But what happens today? We found out that they are part of a rava. So the Pachad Yitzchak, he says, he has to shout to his Rebbe, he says, we have to be machmir. The Gemara is not like that. The Gemara says, okay, so where do we go, Rabbi Isai? Okay, the Gemara says not like that. Do we say that, I could say things have changed. Maybe our lice are not the lice of the times of Chazal, right? Or maybe I could say that Chazal did have this. They didn't know that there were eggs. Maybe if Chazal were dining Kafi what they knew. Maybe if the Chazal would have known about the eggs, then they would have said they're part of Rava, but they didn't know about the eggs. What do you do in such a shayla? So this shayla is very interesting. The Michtav Eliyahu, that's Rav Dessler, Zechariah Levracha, in Chelik Dalid, in page 356, he dines over there in general about things that don't shtim Chazal with the Metzias of today. So he gets to this one, Binyan Akina, to dine on Akina Lails, it's a little bit more difficult. Aval haklal yadua she'ein halacha mischasheves ela b'ma shemurgesh lachushim. He says that the Torah only reckons with what you can see with the human eye, with the naked eye. An egg from a kina, the eggs from the nits are tiny. And therefore, the fact that today we're able to see it, who cares? But Chazal reckoned with it as if this thing was born out of nowhere. Why? Because the starting point of it, we don't see. And when it comes to any other animal or any other creature, so we see the starting point. So therefore, we know we're Messiaches to the shlav before. There's a mami bear, there's a tati bear, and then we're Messiaches to the shlav that comes afterward. Because we see it. But Machenkin here, this thing just came into creation. If you look with a microscope, you're going to see an egg. But that egg that you're going to see, we were not able to see at the point of creation. And therefore, to us, it looks as if it just came out of nowhere. That's what the Pachad Yitzchak says. So he says, you know what? Yes, there are eggs. Yes, we know that it comes from parents, but those parents were not Messiachis to. That's how the Pachad Yitzchak, the Michtav Eliyahu says it. It's basically the Yesod Davar is that we're only machshiv what we could see be'enei b'nei Adam, but something that you can only see with a magnifying glass. And this Mishtetzach is a cloud gadol. Moshe brings this cloud down, like Samim in Hilchos Nida, and this is a cloud legabe bugs and checking bugs, something that you can't see with the human eye. Now this, Rabbi Isai, is what the Pachad Yitzchak says, and it seems to be this, you'd be allowed on Shabbos still today to kill lice. The problem with this is, Rabbi Isai, is that all of us know that you can see the eggs. So what does it mean? You could see the eggs. How do you see the eggs? Everybody knows that there's people that come home, the kids come home, they have lice, and they have eggs. And you say, oh no, there's an egg. We have to take out the nits. They're called nits, and the nits turn into lice. So you do see the eggs. So I guess what the Pachad Yitzchak means, what the Michtav Eliyahu means, and this is what I was explaining, is that at the point of creation, the first moments of that egg, we don't see. When that louse laid the egg, we can't see the egg. It takes time, and then we see the egg. So our first introduction to the egg is not connected. Bishlam of the first second, when the louse laid the egg, we would see it. So then we would have a yachas straight. There's a appearance, there's an egg, it comes out. That's called paravarava. But now it's kivyochol. When we see it, we can only see it after the louse is not here. It had to grow first for us to see it. That in halacha is not something we're mesiachis to. So therefore, if you that, you'd be able to kill it. If you that, it would come out. You'd be able to kill it. Now this lemaisa is a shtickle chiddush, and the Orchid Shabbos in Parak Dalid, he brings down, in Parak Yud Dalid, I think, in Parak Dalid, he brings down from Rav Elyashiv, that Rav Elyashiv said that it's kedai to be meneya from this, and that maybe you do have to assume, like the Pachad Yitzchak thought, that today the Metzias is different, and maybe the Metzias is different than the times of Chazal. Now, before I continue, Rabbi Isai, I think I once saw, I don't see today, I think I once saw in the Shevet HaLevi, a Gavaldik Asvar, there's a big machlekes in the Rishonim, if our lice, which ones they are. There's a big machlekes, are they the black ones, the white ones, the jumping ones, and whatever. It's a big machlekes. So the Shevet HaLevi says, even back then, there was machlekes and Rishonim and whatnot, and it was not clear which lice you were allowed to kill. So you see, it was never a clear thing. So if today it's not clear that our lice do reproduce and don't reproduce and whatever, so who knows? Maybe those lice that we're talking about are the ones that are taka, the asur form of shchita on Shabbos. So it's not such a wild chumrah to accept that our lice, the ones that we see on our hair, have eggs and are able to reproduce and are par of a rava, and the male, they would be also. That's why this shmua that they say from Rav Elyashiv, that Rav Elyashiv said today, you should certainly try to be machmir on it, because maybe our lice are not the same type of lice that they had. It's a little bit more mistaber now, because our lice are not the same lice that they had. No, they are the same lice, but there were lice then that were mutter, and there are lice then that aren't mutter. And taka, maybe the ones that are now laying on our head are the ones that Chazal had back then that they also said were us. So this is a shmua from Rav Elyashiv. Now, it is interesting, though, Rabbi Isai, is that this is the way I just set it up, is how the Welt brings it down. But in the Birur Halacha, in Chelik Daled, he says they all bring the Pachad Yitzchak. He says, but the Pachad Yitzchak never said this. He said the Pachad Yitzchak had this shaila. He sent this shaila, like I mentioned, to Rabbi Yehuda Brill, his Rebbe. And his Rebbe answered him, he said, don't change because the scientists tell you it's different. So his own Rebbe didn't agree with the change. And it seems like at the end of that tshuva, he went with it. It seems that he went with it. Now, this is difficult because we know in halacha, we clearly do reckon with scientific metzias, and we clearly do reckon with the changing reality and things that we find out that the scientists say. So that is a little bit difficult. But you can't bring the Pachad Yitzchak as the one that was machmir. And it's Yadua that Rav Chaim Kanievsky, a few places they bring down, in the Birur Halacha, he brings down over there that they asked in the Shaila, B'Masechta Shabbos, Isa mutter la'aroi kina b'Shabbos, because not part of Rava, and that's the halacha, Shinta Zayin. The Chokrim say today it's different. Hayim will change the din. Tshuva, Divrei Hevel. This is shtus. Mashein roim b'derech harigila sheparim v'ravim zeh atviyim, and Mashe roim al yedei microscope is not part of a Rava. I guess he means like the Pachad Yitzchak. I am telling you, we see the eggs, yeah, but we only see the eggs down the line. We never see the eggs immediately after they were produced. So therefore, that maybe is considered, that's not considered something that we reckon with. Now, the Gemara asks Shiloh. The Gemara says that Hashem is Zan from Karnei Re'im to Beitzei Kinim. And so we see, in fact, the Gemara, that Beitzei Kinim, that there are eggs. It's Para V'Rava. So the Gemara answers, no, it doesn't mean Beitzei Kinim, the eggs of a Kinah. There's a min called the Beitzei Kinim. So Hashem is Zan, all the way from the Karnei Re'im, the biggest thing, to the smallest thing, this min called the Beitzei Kinah. L'maisa lefi, what we're saying, why don't we have a simple answer? That there are eggs for lice, but they're tiny, small. So why can't that be it? So I guess the Gemara didn't want to answer that because at that point of their production, we don't see them. It is a little bit of a kasha, though, Rabbi Isai. It is a little bit of a kasha. The only thing I can tell you is that which they bring, that Rav Elyashiv is machmir. I asked Rav Elyashiv the shaila, and Rav Elyashiv was not machmir. When I asked the shaila to Rav Elyashiv, he said that when you're spraying, let's say you take a spray to kill these kinim. So he said, first of all, what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with murdering the kinim, even if at the worst case scenario that they are taka, the ones that are part of a rava. We're dealing with an ein sarach legufay, which according to most Rishonim is a derabbanan. We're dealing with the child that's suffering, so it's ein sarach legufay b'makim, a child, sar, choyli, etc. And we're also dealing with a suffix. It's a suffix that maybe taka, these are not part of a rava. Maybe it's taka like the times of Chazal. So a suffix on an ein sarach legufay b'makim sar of the child. So Yashiv said there's definitely a makom to be makel if the child is suffering. I guess if for no reason, then maybe to be machmir. Another case that comes up, Rabbi says pinworm. Sometimes the child played a little bit too much in the sandbox, and he comes home and he's itchy, and now these worms, these little mini tiny worms that they eat off of the baby on the bottom, and that's how it goes. How do you get them out? So everyone knows you could either take the Vermax or what, or you take all out in the high. You take some garlic, you put it in, and then they all fly out because they don't want the garlic. Now, what happens when they all come out? So now they're going to die because they used to be eating off of your little meidala, your little yingala, and now all those little bugs are going to die, so you're causing them to die. But it's the same idea, Rabbi said. Pashtus, they're not part of a rava. What do you mean they're not part of a rava? We know they are. Yeah, but that's not something that we can see. That production we don't see. So maybe it's the same ones in the times of Chazal. They're like kinim, and they've formed from zayah. And therefore, if they're formed from zayah, they're formed from the shmutz. So therefore, they're not in Nissa D'Rabbanan. They're not Issa D'Oraisa. They're not Issa D'Rabbanan. They're not LMI. Maybe you're going to be worried that today our pinworm has changed and the worms have changed. So now again, what are you doing over here? It's an Ein Tzarich L'Gufa, the murder. It's more than that. It's interesting. Everybody say, am I trying to kill them? No. I'm doing psigresha. I'm trying to get in the garlic and get them out. They die when they come out because they have nowhere to eat. So that's a grama. It might be psigresha lenichle. It's Ein Tzarich L'Gufay. It certainly is a kilkel. It's not the normal way. And therefore, b'makim tsar of the child, certainly there would be a clear makim to be makel. This is l'chayr. I was thinking maybe a different teretz than the Welt says. I'll tell the oilam, you guys can tell me what you think. I was thinking that maybe taka, because it bothers me that shaila, that there are beitzei kinim, and it bothers me. I mean, and everyone sees them, and it's like that. I don't know. I was thinking that maybe the pshat is that these eggs can only be hatched with the zayah. Maybe that's what the Gemara means. That they're not par of a rava, either's eggs. Yeah, but normal production is there's the mama, the tata, they form an egg and the egg hatches, right? And that is considered a privy. But when the privy can't happen by its own, where Mesiacha said it has to be with the zayah, so now it's no longer meyuchis to the parents. The parents laid it, and the zayah together with the egg is what? So maybe that's not considered that it was formed from the parents. Anything that requires a separate hatching process, which can only happen with the zayah of the person's body. So I was thinking maybe that's the pshat over here. And that's why it's not called, it's part of a rava, because it's not a direct yachas to the parents. Perhaps, vinishvi, what we said, is what to be saying. Which brings us to really the last shiloh over here, Rabbi Yisai, which is what we spoke about at the end of last time, which was trapping a bee on Yontif, trapping a bee on Shabbos, klape the trapping of a bee. So what we spoke about last time, so we said to trap a mosquito is a problem because when you trap a mosquito, so that's Yisr Gomer D'Rabbanan. He's bothering you, he's driving you crazy. What should I tell you? But it's certainly not the tzeda of a mazik, of an animal that could bite you and hurt you that we spoke out, that about that tzeda we were making on. This is the tzeda of something that's bothersome, annoying. So the Mishabura brings down that to trap a parish is awesome. So we saw last time there's two extremes. To trap a mosquito is awesome, even though it bothers you. To trap something that bites you and mamish rips skin and whatnot, for sure. We said last time that what about in the middle? Something like a bee that it hurts tremendously, but it doesn't take a bite out. Obviously, I'm not talking that if there's baby and you're afraid of koch nefesh or someone's allergic, whatever. So we said last time that I brought a machlekes mishnah and the grass. The grass is first to trap a bee on Shabbos is an Isser Gomer, because he holds that the only head that the Chazal gave was when you're doing Seder b'makim hezek. A bee is not hezek. It's just going to hurt. It's sar. And I proved last time from the Mishnah Berurah, not like this. I proved from the Mishnah Berurah that Seder b'makim, a lot of tsar, is going to be aser. Parosh is a little tsar. No, a bee is a lot of tsar. It might not be a hezek, but the Mishnah Berurah's requirement was a lot of tsar. So therefore, we said last time that this guy's find a makim to maybe be makel. Okay, obviously, if you do it with a bee trap, a grama, that's for sure better. That kind we spoke last time. Rabbi said that's all the gabet seder. By seder, you have to keep in mind that when we're doing seder, you're not doing seder for a positive purpose. It's ein b'minoi nitzad. It's the opposite of seder. You're not acquiring your fakir. You're getting rid of, and we saw even the Rambam was makel. By murdering an animal, by murdering a mosquito or murdering a bee, l'chayra, it's just a regular ein tzarich l'gufa. We don't have any of those heterim. Ein tzarich l'gufa, according to the Rambam, it's an Isser Gomer D'Oraisa. And according to everybody else, it's still an Isser Chomer B'Drabanan. So l'chayra, there should be no effort to murder a bee or to murder a mosquito, and that's what Mishnah Berurah says. But Rabbi Isai, I can tell you a murdik interesting cheshbon I want him to think about. Rabbi Isai, every time I kill an animal, was I also over on Seder? I'm going to tell you two interesting shilas, and then we're going to put them together. Shilah number one: when I kill an animal, I go hunting. This week's parsha, Esav, right? I go hunting. I shoot a deer. So what did I do? I killed him. I was over on Shaychit and Chayvel, and I was also over on Seder. L'chayra, I trapped him. Is that true? If I kill an animal, am I also over on Seder? So the Rav Yah in Kuf Tali Dal says. It's based on a Gemara. The parach alima ilem Rabbi Yehuda Amalach Shein Tzich L'Guf Chayev Mishum Tzeda Dikishenerogin Areya Nitzoidim. He learns first that when you kill an animal, you're also trapping it. You're also trapping it. And in Svara, I could definitely hear such a thing. I think everybody here can hear such a thing. But you have to know, it's a little difficult to go into, but there's a Toisus in Kufchav Aleph on the base, Dibra Maskal Koil, which clearly sounds not like this. I'll read it to you. I'm not sure if I'll be able to explain it on a site. It's a bit sugidik. Toisus says, Kol HaMazikin Erogim B'Shabbos. It's an animal that is mamish dangerous. You can even kill him, right? Afagav the time b'mastisim vala akrav, a scorpion. It's lashmina. We know already a scorpion you're allowed to kill. So what's the chiddush of any mazikin you're allowed to kill? Real dangerous animals. Lashmina dariga nami sharina. The chiddush here is that over there was talking about trapping the scorpion. Here we're talking about killing. Because I would think killing is a big thing. Like, everyone sees it. You stand, put a cup on it, nobody chaps what you're doing. So I would have thought, and my time attack a riga. Rabbi say, wait a minute. He just said, so therefore the chiddush is you're only doing a riga. Wait, what do you mean? Every time I do a riga, I'm also doing Seder. So it sounds like from Taisus, no, when you kill, it's called Hariga. And you're not over also on Seder. This seems to be a Pashut world war. This seems to be a tremendous world war. I don't want to go into it. This rise maybe from an Avnei Nezer. It seems to be a world war. When I kill an animal, am I in addition to Hariga, am I also over on Seder? That's one shaila. Let's put that on the side. We'll come back in a moment. That's one shaila. Now I'm going to ask you another shaila. Rabbi say, on Yontif, can I kill a bug? What? Yontif, why should you be allowed to kill a bug? Rabbi say, even though you don't want to eat the bug, but mitoich that you're allowed to kill an animal to eat, mitoich shehutra l'tzarech, I should be allowed to kill a bug, shalai l'tzarech. And not only that, it's a very big tzarech that he shouldn't bother me. And we know there's a halacha of mitoich. So you allowed on Yontif to kill a bug. So what do you say, everybody say? And this was the tzad of the great Goyin, Rabbi Yankiv Kamenetsky, Zeichet Tzadik Lebracha. They bring down the Emes Yankiv in the Mechitzas Rabbeinu, in the 139th page, that Rosh Hashanah Tav Shin Chavav, he was hoira on Rosh Hashanah, but he said the Yom Adin to kill a mosquito in the house. He said, Hutrat Shchita, Hutrat Netil Neshama Shalei L'Tzarech. As a mela, anytime there's a little bit of a tzarech, you have to have a little bit of a tzarech to be paskin, but this is a vada, an annoying thing. So then you could be mekel. And in the Emes Yankiv, in the 518 Siman, Yesh Svara Loimar, the Kevin Damrinan Mitoich Legabe Shchita, Im Kein Yem Mutter, Larek Dvarim Yitushim B'Yantif, Mikol Makom L'Maisa Tzarechien. L'Maisa Tzarechien. The Sefer V'Dibat Bam in Chelak Aleph in the 144th Siman, they bring down from Rav David Feinstein, the same idea. Same type of idea. That taka, maybe there's a gather of mitoich. So B'Sai, is this Pasha? It's B'chlal not Pasha. The Meister of Shlomo Zalman, the great Goyim, he danced in the Minchas Shlomo in Chelik Beisim in Ches. He says he's not clear at all if mitoich is said on something that's not positive. Here, you're ridding yourself. That's in the negative. And he has a whole Nidin over here where he wants to say, he has rayas that perhaps the only time you say mitoich is when something's positive. But Rabbi Isai, we can don a different shaila on Rabbi Yankiv Zichron Levrache. Rabbi Isai, let's put these two shailas together. I have a bee flying around my sukkah, or I have a mosquito flying around my sukkah, and my choice is to leave the sukkah. Mitzvah pater min sukkah. I say, wait. Mitzvah pater min sukkah. Wait. Why can't you just catch it? You say, well, catching it, I'm an anical of the Balatanya, and I don't catch bees. On Shabbos, on Yontif, I don't catch bees. Mosquitoes, you're never allowed to catch mosquitoes. Shabbos, Yontif, you're never allowed to catch mosquitoes. What are you doing? You can't catch a mosquito. I tell you, wait a second. So don't catch him, kill him. What? You're sure it's a besser? I thought, yeah. Mitzad, Seidah, Taka, you're right. There's no other Seidah and Yontif. Okay, but murder? Mitoich she'otra, l'tzarech, hotra shalai l'tzarech. So don't trap the bee, don't trap the mosquito, kill it. So what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me like this. You're going to say, wait, we had another shaila a second ago. We just dabbed another shaila. Is every time I kill an animal, are you also over on Seder? So it's very interesting. It'll come out and murder the Gazach. That's another time on Rabbi Yankiv, which I guess Rabbi Yankiv didn't know of. What do you mean, Rabbi Yankiv, Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, that I'm allowed to kill a mosquito on Rosh Hashanah in the year 1966, Rosh Hashanah 1965, actually, right? What do you mean I'm allowed to kill a mosquito? Okay, I hear mitzad mitoich, but Rabbi said, what happened to Tzeda? Every time I kill, I'm also trapping it because now he's now incapacitated. So what do you see? You see Rabbi Yankiv, I guess, held not like that. But that's another way to argue. There are many achronim that take on the halacha, like I mentioned, like this Rav Yo, who's explicit, that when I kill, when you have a rishon that's explicit, and you have nobody else after the rishon, except for achronim that dan the shaila, so then l'chayra, forget the murder. You're also over on Seder. So kumtais, unbelievable thing. Rabbi say, you ready for this? Now I'm going to tell you unbelievable chiddush. So kumtais, what happens if a fellow has a bee in his sukkah? And he tried all the nigunim, Biela, Guy, Avek, Ich bin a king from Avinu, and all the things. He tried it and the bee won't leave. All right? And he puts up the bee trap for the grummer, like we said last time. The bee's not going anywhere and he's buzzing around, it's driving you crazy. Okay? So now he says, okay, you know what? I'm going to kill it. What? What do you mean you're going to kill it? So let's see. First of all, maybe we have mitoich. So you're going to say, okay, but mitoich, but you told me that there's another problem. There's a problem of Seder. And even if Rabbi Yankiv is right, mitzad mitoich, but what about Seder? So on the Seder, I'll tell you, no, but I am going to go with the Mishnah Berurah, that the bee is not a problem of Seder. So it'll come out an unbelievable chiddush. It'll come out that if you have a bee in your sukkah, you'll fear Rabbi Yankiv, you'll be able to kill the bee. But if it's a mosquito, so then you won't be allowed to kill the mosquito. Now, I know that Rabbi Yankiv didn't say like this. I'm saying, let's say we can maybe done. That the bee you'd be allowed to kill because murder ain't gone because mitoich. Seder ain't gone because Mishnah Berurah said that tsar is enough of a level to matter Seder. Masha ain't a mosquito. If you're going to kill him, so mitoich we have. But you have the problem of Seder because Seder, I'll go put him on a mosquito. So that there's no heter in the world. Nobody was ever make on that. But the Meiser of Shlomo Zalman was machmir legamrei because Shlomo Zalman said he was bothered by the mitoich aspect. That you don't say mitoich unless it's a positive purpose. So the Zohar Rabbi say, it's probably better to just chant the niggin, bila, guy effect, put up the bee trap, and probably not to kill him. But if a person wants to know if as a result of that, he's going to leave the sukkah, and so he's a mitzvah, he's part of the sukkah. So now you have to don. I don't know, maybe you should don that killing the bee is taker amalgam mekel because you have mitoich and you have my cheshbon of tzeda. But I'm telling you, Rabbi Isai, it's a grace chiddush. I myself am not saying mechan. And only lahagdil tzera lahadir and halavai bez Hashem. Rabbi Isai will be zeicher to sit in the sukkahs David Anufalas.